See Larry Elder at Cigar Night on Thursday, May 17th at the Bolingbrook Golf Club. Tickets on sale now at 560theanswer.com/cigar.
What up, Dan and Amy? And Trump attorney Michael Cohen is in court today after the FBI raid in his home, office, hotel room last week.
Yeah, he's trying to get some of his stuff back, really. And he went on Friday, but he wasn't present. He had another attorney, and the judge said he needs to be in this courtroom. So he's going to be in the courtroom today, and guess who else is coming? Stormy Daniels allegedly is going to be in there as well.
And on the occasion of the FBI raid of Cohen's office and home in a hotel room.
And safety deposit box.
Last week, Scott Adams, Dilbert cartoon creator and Trump whisperer, friend of the show, had this to say when he took to Periscope.
But at this point, President Trump has my full support to fire everybody. He can fire people who just have names that sound like these assholes now. He can fire Sessions, he can fire Rosenstein, he can fire all of them now. He has my full support. Fire everybody you need to do. And I'm totally on board. And by the way, I don't want to know, I don't care what the charges are. I don't care what they find at President Trump's personal lawyer's place. Period. Game over.
Apparently, they crossed a red line for Scott Adams, they being the FBI and those investigating Trump. And for more on that, we're pleased to be joined by the aforesaid Scott Adams, who's not only the creator of the Dilbert cartoon, but also the author of Win Bigly, Persuasion in a World Where Facts Don't Matter. Scott, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So are you still seething about that raid on Cohen's places?
Well, my first reaction was this has something to do with Stormy Daniels, and they're criminalizing the president's sex life and using that to take him down. But it's not entirely clear at this point that that's what's happening. It could be that the process just caught the lawyer up, in its gears. So it could be something unrelated to Stormy Daniels. But the mere fact that the Stormy Daniels thing might be the reason that he was looked at in the first place is troubling, because it appears that 100% of the people who are in the news are also criminals, one way or the other. The people doing the investigating, they're criminals. The people being investigated, they're criminals. The lawyers of those people. When you get to a point where your lawyer has a lawyer, just everything's wrong. The whole world's falling apart.
And President Trump did tweet yesterday, attorney-client privilege is now a thing of the past. I have too many lawyers, and they're probably wondering when their offices and even homes are going to be raided with everything, including their phones and computers, taken away. All lawyers are deflated and concerned. Do you think, this is unprecedented for even, seasoned radio personalities, because I have never seen anything like this. Isn't it against the Fourth and Sixth Amendment?
Well, we still have to wait and see, because we don't know exactly why they did what they did. All we know is that the timing is so connected to all the Stormy Daniels stuff that it's hard to imagine they're unrelated, even though they probably are. But it could be they just kicked up something they just couldn't ignore. So I'm going to be a little bit more open-minded than I was in my first reaction that you played at the start of the show. But I will still double down on the fact that if the president needs to fire anybody, I, as a citizen, just as a citizen, would be okay. I think Mueller's gone long enough, and I think there's enough question about some of the things happening that if he needed to clean house, I would say he's waited long enough. Now, I don't think it's good legal advice, so if I were his lawyer, I probably would tell him not to fire anybody. But just as a citizen, I think I've seen enough now.
And with respect to some of the other public figures, including former FBI Director Jim Comey, who's making the tour of the variety shows to sell his book this week. I don't know if you caught the interview last night or not, but effectively it was sawing sawdust, things that he has said publicly and testimony before Congress and otherwise. But I wonder what your reaction is to him invoking morality. President Trump is morally unfit for office. this with the FBI report, Inspector General report, that comes out concurrent to his whirlwind tour that finds that his chief lieutenant was basically a prolific liar during his time at FBI before he was fired.
Well, something like 15 years ago, I made a prediction that when we got to the point where we could detect any kind of crime, we would discover that everyone was a criminal, that just some people were getting caught and some people weren't. And we may have reached that point because our ability to go through electronic communications, essentially at this level, I think we're going to find out that almost everybody was violating some kind of crime. Everybody was leaking, everybody was obstructing a little bit of justice. Everybody was colluding a little bit. So I think that's the big takeaway, is that we may never have a president who doesn't have this kind of trouble. Because if this is okay, if dogging a president to the end of the earth after being elected is okay, we're going to see it every time. And I don't think any president is safe. So my point of view is when I'm watching a show like Comey's interview, and I see Stephen Huffles and him literally inventing imaginary crimes, such as, do you think it's possible that he colluded with Russia? And you get answers like, well, it's possible.
Anything's possible.
It's possible that I colluded with Putin. I didn't, but it's possible.
Well, what do you think will be? What do you think will be worse for President Trump, though, this Russian investigation or the Cohen investigation?
Oh, I would think without any further knowledge, the Cohen investigation has to be seen as the scary one. But the question I ask is, he called himself a fixer, Cohen did. What kind of fixer leaves incriminating information on devices or even uses those devices in the first place for stuff that is a crime?
Not exactly Michael Clayton.
We're going to find out how good a lawyer he is. If they scraped his whole office and they don't find anything, I'm going to say, Michael Cohen, you are one good lawyer. But if they do find stuff, I think everybody's going to say, what an idiot.
Well, and the thing, too, just going back to what you were talking about kind of everybody's got dirty hands, if not criminally dirty hands. Dershowitz has talked about this before. We've actually talked about this in Illinois going back, more than a decade because, we have so many public officials go to prison here. And that is the criminalization of political differences. And prosecutors or FBI directors or deputy FBI directors that turn into politicians, that are positioning themselves, that are headhunting. They're not seeking justice. And we had another example, again, all the confluence of all these events, the pardon that Trump issued on Friday of former Cheney chief of staff Scooter Libby.
Yeah. I'm starting to wonder if we shouldn't have some kind of carve-out for elected presidents. For example, something along the lines of, if we find out something that involves your sex life, we're just going to let that go for 4 to 8 years until you're out of office. There's just a law that says we just can't do anything about that. Afterwards we'll talk about it, but while you're doing the work of the people, the idea that justice should be blind, everybody should be treated the same. I'll tell you, that for me, that stops when you're bugging the presidency and he can't do the work for which the people require him to be their servant. And once it affects the entire country and all of us, I get a little bit of flexible about whether he has some parking tickets or something. If it's a big deal, then of course you've got to look into it.
Circus. I mean, today Stormy Daniels going to Cohen's, court hearing today. That's just, it adds to it. It's crazy. I don't want to hear about her and President Trump. I don't want to see any pictures. I don't want to read any text messages. I want it to go away.
It might be the only court case where you ever hear the sentence, Your Honor, may I approach the pole?
Zing.
You're not going to hear that in any other court case.
No, probably not.
There's no right to be there. It's
I don't know. I have to think about some other court case. I'll have to think about that. Scott, let me ask you this, though. Do you still think Trump's, the master communicator, have his responses, his tweets about Jim Comey, have they been helpful, do you think, or should he be silent and let Comey sink under his own weight?
Well, this is one of those situations where a historical context helps. This is the now 900th time we've had the conversation about, not us, but the world has wondered whether President Trump has gone too far on Twitter. And every time it just seems to work. His approval seems to be creeping up. The economy is doing well. ISIS wishes it hadn't been born. North Korea is getting flexible. So, if you step back from the tediousness of the lawyer stuff in the headlines, things are going really, really well in the world, at large. Race relations and healthcare need some work, but a lot of the other bigger stuff is really going well. So you don't want to lose that. So when we're looking at today's outrage about Trump attacking another critic, I would say I'm never going to have a problem with this president attacking every person who attacks him. Mm-hmm. No matter where it comes from, the legal system, trusted institutions, children. I don't care where it comes from. If that's who he is, and that's who the voters elected, they elected a counterpuncher. And if he stops counterpunching, I think people would be more worried about that.
With respect to the media, everybody sees Trump's counterpunching. Do you think they see the punches that are pulled by the D.C. press corps? Stephanopoulos pulled many last night. No questions about McCabe. No questions about the IG report. Comey says there's some evidence the president has obstructed justice. Stephanopoulos doesn't ask the obvious follow-up. Okay, well, what's the evidence? Do you think people see the punches being pulled by those who are trying to advance a position, a narrative, rather than provide information?
I think there was a time, and that time wasn't too long ago, just a few years ago, when the average citizen would have said that the news that they follow is unbiased, but the other side is a mess. It's like, man, there's a lot of bias on that other side. But I'm not sure people see that anymore. It seems like we understand that the news is just one side or the other. Nobody's really trying to play it down the middle. So I think when people look at all this stuff now, they're looking at it through, I'd say, a more mature filter. They're just looking at it with a little more skepticism, as they should. Take Syria. Syria is the greatest example of the public just throwing up its hands and saying, we don't know what happened over there. Mm-hmm. We just don't know. We don't know what we bombed. We don't know who gassed who. We just know there's something going on over there, and we don't like it.
A text. We just got a text. I think captures what you're saying very well. Who would want to work with a lying, colluding, amoral mafia don? Jim Comey. That's who. Scott Adams, Dilbert cartoon creator, author of the book Win Bigly, Persuasion in a World Where Facts Don't Matter. Scott, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. And we have some breaking news. The U.S. Supreme Court will not hear former Governor Rod Blagojevich's appeal.
Bye-bye.